Hello friends, I am Khadijat Seifa, first year MA English student. Welcome to E-Content Development Center of Majlis Arts and Science College, Puramannur. In today's video lecture, I am going to talk about metaphysical poetry. We are all familiar with that term metaphysical poetry. So what is metaphysical poetry? From that word, we can understand that it is a self-explanatory word, metaphysical. Meta means beyond or above. Physical means a physical world. So it means beyond a physical world. So metaphysical poetry focuses on the union of souls, or it deals with the questions that can't be answered by the science. Metaphysical poetry refers to a category of poems of 17th century which features a good proportion of conceits, puns, paradoxes and speculation about subjects like love and religion. In the beginning, metaphysical term is used in the negative sense. We can understand that from the words of John Dryden. John Dryden says about John Dunn that he affected metaphysics. In those times, the metaphysical poets were not bothered about their metaphysical elements in their poetry. But later, Dr. Samuel Johnson coined this term metaphysical poetry. We can see that term in his famous work, The Lives of Eminent English Poets. Samuel Johnson looked up their works and he was able to club them together and find out some common characteristics in their works, and he coined the term metaphysical poetry. He says that they were men of learning, and he also says that they were all pretentious. This was the concept of metaphysical poetry in those times. Later, another writer, H.G. Grierson, wrote about metaphysical poetry in his collection of books, an anthology titled Metaphysical Lyrics and Poems of 17th Century. In that book, he made a compilation of detailed analysis of metaphysical poets and their works. Through that book, so many poets can understand the importance of metaphysical poetry, and so many critics like T.S. Eliot noticed this type of metaphysical poetry. The Metaphysical Poets, which was published in 1921. It was a review for Grierson's work. In that work, we can see he made a detailed analysis of metaphysical poets, and he felt that they are very high class in their poetry. And he also placed a position to John Donne, the first rank position to John Donne on the hierarchy of poets. He also credited metaphysical poets with the quality of unified sensibility. Through his analysis, he can bring metaphysical poetry to the limelight, and the people who can read once again the metaphysical poetry with new interest. Now let us just go through the important characteristics of metaphysical poetry. The first important characteristic of metaphysical poetry is that broke away from the conventional traditions of versification. They discarded the melodious kind of versification. Then the second important characteristic of metaphysical poetry is that is more analytical and philosophical instead of romantic. Another important characteristic of metaphysical poetry is the metaphysical poets are more realistic, ironic and sarcastic in those days. So they are different from another poets. Other important characteristic of metaphysical poetry is they changed the poetic diction instead of poetic language. Another important characteristic of metaphysical poetry is use of conceits. Conceits are far-fetched images. Conceits are also called extended simile or strained metaphors. I will give you an example for conceit from John Donne's work, A Valediction Forbidding Morning. That is a beautiful work written by John Donne. In that work, we can see a love compared to the two metal legs of compass. That is an unromantic comparison, but it serves its purpose very well. Another important characteristics of metaphysical poetry is use of shocked tactics, that means abrupt beginning or unexpected opening. I will give you an example for that. Is also from John Donne's work, The Canonization. In that poem, he begins with the line, "For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love you." So that is an abrupt beginning. And another important characteristic of metaphysical poetry is use of carpe diem. Carpe diem is a Latin word used by Horace in his odes. Carpe diem is also can be seen in metaphysical poems. I will give you an example of carpe diem in metaphysical poem is Andrew Marvell's To His Coy Mistress. In that poem, we can see the use of carpe diem. Carpe diem means to seize the day or to enjoy at the present moment. In that poem, the speaker wants a physical relationship with the lady, that is to his mistress. So, it means to enjoy the present moment, not past or not future. These are some important characteristics of metaphysical poetry. Now, let me just go through the metaphysical school. Metaphysical school contains some metaphysical poets like John Dunn, George Herbert, Andrew Marvell, Abraham Cowley, and John Hall. These are the important metaphysical poets. Now, let's just go through the metaphysical poets and their work. The important metaphysical poet is John Donne. His works are The Flea, The Sun Rising, In Valediction Forbidding Morning, and other poems are also included. Another important writer is Andrew Marvell. His some important works are To His Coy Mistress, The Caranet, and Bermudas. Other important metaphysical poets is George Herbert. His works are Jordan First, The Pearl, and The Collar. Another important metaphysical poet is Henry Vaughan. His works are The Retreat and The World. Now let us go to the decline of metaphysical poetry. Metaphysical poetry declined with the restoration of Charles II in 1660, and the theatres were opened back. In that time, metaphysical poetry was declined. So friends, this is about metaphysical poetry. So I hope you will understand metaphysical poetry very well. Thank you.